Nicole Thomas, and welcome to CoreNet Café. We're excited to be joined today by Jon Machiran, a leading member of the Mid-Atlantic Corporate Real Estate and Facilities community. As some of you may know, Jon is the Director of Real Estate and Facilities for GEICO, and he's also on the Executive Committee of the Mid-Atlantic CoreNet chapter. Jon, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good morning.
Good morning. Are you drinking your coffee? I know we were
I got a
talking about it
coffee.
earlier.
Yeah, I got a large one this morning to at
Gotta
least
get
get me
ready
through the
for us
morning.
today, CoreNet Cafe.
That's right. Yeah.
So Jon, I kind of want to start back just for those people who don't know you. I understand you actually started in development, managing medical campus office projects. How did you go from that into getting to work with GEICO and being their Director of Facilities and Real Estate?
Yeah. So the short answer is 2008. But yeah, so I was doing some kind of property management, new development type stuff, and just I thought that's where I was going to be, and just doing that stuff, I kind of fell in love with real estate, and always pictured that I was going to be more on the developer side of the industry, but 2008 came rolling along, and at the time I just kind of needed something, and GEICO being a Berkshire Hathaway company, just all signs led to this might be a good fit. So timing was good. The position was open. So kind of came over here, and it's been good.
So I have to say, so in my undergrad, I actually majored in marketing, and in grad school too. And I'd say GEICO is one of those companies that you actually study a lot of marketing, just
Yeah.
because, I mean, it's amazing. What's it actually like to work there?
It's good. It's our marketing team is just, they're phenomenal, and I think they kind of understand the importance of what they do, and how staying aggressive has always helped us in our business. So they do a really good job of that. But a lot of what you see on the commercials, it's kind of us. Generally, it's a serious business, and everybody takes it serious. But we kind of put our people first, and make sure we take care of our people, keep our people good, and the value proposition is such a big deal for us. We're like we say in the commercials, we're here to save our customers money. So so that's, especially in what I do, that's always kind of a point of emphasis, is we got to do our best to manage our budget and stay disciplined, so that kind of passes through to our offerings and things like that. But it's a solid company to work for. We I think we're fortunate that we've got our senior management as down to earth a group as you can have, and they're got their pulse on everything, so you can kind of get quick answers on things, and so it's good. It's been fun to work for.
And you mentioned you started there in 2008 due to the recession, right? Development, like in the DC area, kind of stopped. But then I know in 2013 was where you really grew with the company and took over management of, and let me start, leasing, acquisition, workplace design, construction, facilities. Like, when do you sleep?
Well, I got a little baby at home, so there's no sleep to be had in my house. So there's plenty of time to catch up.
That's the large Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
That's right. Yeah, I'm living on it.
So when you're touching so many different things at a company like GEICO, what's your favorite part when you look at those? So, workplace design, construction, you did development before, so we're looking at acquisition. Like, what do you enjoy the most?
Yeah. I think it's maybe all or maybe none, but the one thing that really keeps me going is just touching different things, and it's Monday is never the same as Tuesday, is never the same as Wednesday. So so we just handle so many different things, and we keep it moving. So one day maybe we're working on something that's really transactional, and you're kind of deep into that, and then the next day it's more kind of construction project management stuff, or talking workplace. So it's just there's doing all those different things, but we don't do a whole lot of new construction. So when that stuff comes up, it's a lot of fun, especially kind of with my background. I really like getting into the weeds on that stuff. So the new construction projects I always have a ton of fun with. But I think just the kind of diversity, and just doing, just working on a lot of different things throughout the day, and from a bunch of different business units as well, as that's what keeps me going.
Has it been, I mean, you're obviously in the office now, but when you're working with so many different business units and have so many different balls in there, right? And different things like you have to switch your mind on, has it been difficult not having everyone maybe in the office like they would have been before COVID?
Yeah, yeah. I think I've heard people say this a lot, so I don't think I'm unique in saying this. I think the hardest thing, for in what we do and those things that you got to be a little bit collaborative on is, sometimes you can get a quick answer by walking out of your office and grabbing a handful of people talking about something, and it's resolved. But now in the format we're in, it's you got to schedule a meeting, and hopefully everybody can make it. And so maybe it's you schedule something, and by the time you're all done, you spend half a day between getting something scheduled and talking through what you got to do, versus once you can just walk outside in the hallway and just say, hey, what do you want to do about this, and rock and roll. So that piece can be a little bit complicated. We're a bit used to it because we handle stuff all over the country. So I traveled a bit before all this stuff. So we had a little bit of this stuff, and we knew how to use some of the technology and things to get it answered, but it's just not having people here every day. That's the one thing that's been really hard for me.
So how big is your portfolio?
We have about 5.5 million square feet, and we're it's a bit diverse. So we've got regional headquarters buildings, so and they take up the majority of that footprint, and then we've got other kind of smaller offices just sprinkled. Pickett City, we got some presence there. So it's kind of diverse. Couple warehouses, some of that more back office type stuff.
And is there a project that you worked on that you really enjoyed, or something that you'd want to share with our audience?
So just doing different stuff is always really really fun for me. But a couple years ago, we did our national training center, and our field team, our auto adjusters, they're the best, and we really focus on training for that group. So when we did their national training center, it's basically a functional garage. So it's got all the equipment that you would see in a body shop or your mechanic's shop. And when we built that thing, it was just so different for us, and just kind of figuring out how that works. And we put bleachers in the garages so that they can huddle up around a piece of equipment or a piece of a car, and there's bleachers that'll come out so everybody can kind of look over it, and kind of integrating the technology so that they can stream all that stuff too, and so they could be looking at it, but somebody in the other room might be looking at that same piece of an engine in the room. So that was a lot of fun. It was just very different from anything else we've done before.
Did you learn anything about cars while you were in there? Did you get any hands-on practice?
No, it's always so like inspiring. I'm like, oh man, I can do this. I could get in there and do something. But then when I actually go to try it, it doesn't work. So I know my limitations.
So I imagine working for a company like Geico, you might get to meet interesting people. Have you gotten to meet anybody famous?
We're a Berkshire Hathaway company, so Mr. Buffett comes by now and again. So that's always
No way.
cool. Yeah, that's always really cool.
Bethesda, like into the headquarters?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
how is it? Like, what's he like?
So I won't pretend to know more than I do, but I think his approachability is the one thing that kind of catches you off guard. You kind of think about a name like that, and you're like, you have a certain expectation, but I mean, he just makes you feel welcome, and it's you don't think you're standing there next to Warren Buffett, but kind of you're like in shock at it. Yeah. Until you see the picture, like, whoa, it's like, yeah, this guy really is, Oracle of Omaha. But he's just the approachability, and I think that gets passed down through the ranks of the Berkshire companies. I mentioned it before about how approachable our seniors are, and how kind of down to earth they are for the level that they operate. And I think that probably all is a trickle down.
So when we're talking about the Berkshire like Hathaway companies, do you meet with their other like people in your role? So the other people who are in charge of real estate for the other groups, do you guys all meet together, or is it just very separate?
Yeah, not a ton. I mean, there's some programs and some networks, to try to get some collaboration going between the Berkshire Hathaway companies, but by and large, they operate pretty independently. So and some of the companies that, might be a service provider for us that we work for, if we do spark a relationship with them, a working relationship, it's probably because, the economics make sense or the service levels make sense, but not just to do it just because they're a Berkshire Hathaway company. So the companies do, function pretty independently. But it is good. And, there's some resources that we can share. And in fact, when we, Berkshire's got a pretty large automotive company. When we did that training center, we were able to, get some resources and some help about, a paint booth, for example. I don't know how to build a paint booth. So, talking to those folks, that were in the automotive section, they said, oh, here's a couple groups you can talk to. Here's the things that are important. And so they helped us with that. So there's that stuff that happens. But by and large, I think they function pretty independently.
That's so interesting. So in your role, we're obviously in a weird time now. So one thing I think the audience would be pretty interested in based on the chat is we're, potentially going through a recession now, right? Some people are like, it's a recession, maybe it's not, right? There are people who are, exiting jobs probably similar to what you had happen in 2008. What advice would you give if somebody was really looking at coming into a corporate real estate function, something like what you're doing? Are there maybe different classes they should be taking, things they should be reading, learning, characteristics that, you'd suggest maybe would be more successful?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess a couple thoughts, and I'll just go stream of conscience as you're asking the question. But if stability of the company, right? Depending on where you're at in your career and things like that. But if it is a company you expect to stay with and develop with over time, versus if you're just trying to get your foot in the door somewhere. But I think the stability of the company is one thing that's to me is always very important. That's something I'd at least go in with open eyes, what you might be getting into. But one thing I think is interesting about our industry, and I'd mention this to anybody who's getting in, is don't overthink that first corporate real estate position you get into, because as Nicole, you can start here and end up anywhere, right? And it's almost feels like it's kind of a small group or a small network. But even within a company like where I am now, you could be doing transactional stuff, you could be designing projects, construction management. So you could start somewhere, but there's opportunity and you could move someplace else. So you get in, you kind of demonstrate who you are and your brand. And then I think as you're doing the work, you can learn different parts of it. And once you have that foundation in corporate real estate, I think it can translate and go a few different ways.
And I think that's a really good point, because it's like, if it's the right company, even if it's not exactly the right position now, it might be, worth the effort of applying and seeing if you can get in, because, you were development and you love those new projects, but then your favorite project you've told us about is, it wasn't a new build. It was actually like an automotive learning center.
Right.
So you never know maybe what passions or interest you'll develop.
Yeah. There's so many parts of this game, right? Between finishes, furniture, construction, whatever. So I think, kind of getting in, getting the exposure, I think is, you can start there. And I think there's a lot of places you can go from there.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've all learned now how important that flexibility for us all to have is key, right? Being able to be nimble, agile. And I think probably nothing's pushed us harder than COVID.
Yeah.
For doing that. So, for you with kind of hands in leasing, design, facilities, how has COVID impacted you and your organization?
Yeah. Well, I think it hit everybody, pretty hard. So specifically for what I do, it, we're in a bit of a wait and see period here, I think. We started some projects, the things that we didn't have to keep moving. We want to just kind of slow play them a little bit and see where things land, and, understand the impact of, what's the future and permanent work from home strategy. We still feel like we're in a little bit of a disaster recovery phase, right? So it's, how people are working.
That's a great way to call it, a disaster recovery phase.
Yeah. So I think how people want to work and where they want to work right now, it's, it's hard to say, is that really how they might perceive this or what they might want to do in perpetuity. So we're in a little bit of wait and see on that front. One thing that I think has been interesting and good for us is it's really forced us to be analytical about things too. So kind of measuring, how we can set up buildings and what the right densities for our buildings are, and so we've really taken an analytical approach that's been more so than we have on things in the past. And we are and have been a growth company, so a lot of the pressures that I've been under is how can we keep up with the growth and the headcounts and things like that. So not to say that we're not still growing, but some of that growth can be handled with work from home, so it doesn't necessarily put the pressure on the real estate like it did before. So now, so we have more of an opportunity to measure some things that that I think is good for us, and it's probably stuff that we could have benefited from before, but I think it everything that's happening now has really put this into the forefront.
I feel like we were all moving so fast before, right? It was just, I feel like it was just always everybody had so much pressure, and it was just decisions, right?
Right.
Like, especially when you're a growth company.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So right now, what percentage of people at the headquarters are working from home?
It's so we're in I sit in our corporate headquarters building, so we're maybe 10% of people coming in right now, and we're kind of phasing through the year, but we're our buildings are officially open, so it's people who need to come in. So if whatever's going on at home just isn't working or whatever, we're open, so come on in if you need to. And then we've got any kind of owner occupier, we got a pretty big contingent of essentials. So and right now for us anyway, the essentials are really kind of the main group that are the main segment that are coming in our buildings. So we've got a few volunteers, and then we'll keep opening up a little bit more. We're continuing to learn, like everybody else, what works, what doesn't work for opening offices and things like that. So as we get more comfortable, we'll keep going up, and of course keeping an eye on what's happening with cases and things like that, and this how things are spreading or not spreading, I guess, is more important. But so we're still low.
Do you have a date right now for when? Do you have like a goal date of when you want to have the majority of employees back in the building?
We're as far as 50%. So we don't know, what's after that, but we've got a plan mapped out through the balance of the year that could get us up to 50%. And the way we're looking at the percentages is it's almost 1% because we've reevaluated what a building can accommodate. So before, if our headquarters building could hold 3,000 people, now it's probably 1,500. So our percentages are kind of based on of that 1,500, for example, how many people are we comfortable bringing in the doors. So everything's kind of scaled down, and we're just trying to slowly bring people in and phase them. But we officially opened early August for volunteers. So before that it was essentials only. So we're officially open for volunteers, and then that's kind of ramping up, and again, depending on what people are up against with technology, kids in school, whatever else is happening at home, like dogs and cats, whatever's going on at home. So ability to get coffee, that's important, obviously. So all that stuff. So we're
only Starbucks. I don't know about Dunkin' Donuts, but. So do you have any advice though? Because I think that's really interesting. How did you, or what advice do you have for a company that's looking at adjusting their density? So if they, originally in their space, maybe had 400, like, do you have any, like how you guys did that? Went from 3,000 to, did you do it by 60 or?
Yeah, so we did it a few ways, and then just kind of brought all the numbers together. So initially we just kind of looked at a capacity of a building and just literally did the exercise. If we drew a 6-foot circle around everything, what do we get to? Our concern with that though is, if you just looking at that number alone, what that won't account for is, you ramp up in the morning, in and out at lunch. At the end of the day, you ramp down. So there are these periods, right, where there could be a bunch of people coming through the door, which we didn't think was good. And some of our buildings have different dependency for elevators and things like that. So we added some factors in for that. So that's probably and I don't think any of this stuff is unique, but that's one thing I'd recommend people consider. It's it's not just how your accommodator is situated at your desk, but you got to get in and out of the building. You got to get up and down an elevator maybe. So there's some other factors that I think you want to think about, and so it's how can you spread out when you're there, but how can you get people in and out safely? And what does that kind of big picture look like? And for us, we're sincerely, we're kind of people first company. So so when we're making these decisions, we're taking it slow. We're being conservative where we can, just to make sure we can keep things safe as we can.
That makes sense. I actually heard one of the landlords was actually starting to do tickets for their building for the elevator. So it was a multi-tenant building, but it was almost like Disneyland, right? Like you sign up on your phone for the time that you want to arrive, and you've got a 15-minute grace period
Wow.
to try to limit, right, the amount of people arriving in the building at one time, like you said. So you don't
Wow.
have, at 7:30 a.m. in DC, suddenly there's a line like around the building of people trying to get
Yeah. Yeah. We're right now I consider it fortunate in a way that we don't have, 30, 40 story buildings. I can't imagine the logistics of dealing with that stuff. But yeah, there's a lot to think about.
Yeah. So do you have any predictions for us, or have you been thinking, you've got such an interesting background, like what do you think about the future of office space? Like what's it going to look like? Is it going to be very different? And when we think about like maybe like with treatment versus post-vaccine, or, is this a temporary moment in
Yeah.
time for us, that disaster, and we'll get past it? And
Yeah. So I don't have a crystal ball, nor am I smart enough to, be able to draw any material conclusions. But I mean, I do think people have a short memory about certain things. You know, and I don't want to get too tangential here, but we refinanced our house, and when we bought our house after 2008, I remember the paperwork just being mind-numbing. And then we did this refinance, and it was like, felt like it was, oh, this is back to normal. Yeah, so it's almost like maybe people forgot about the credit crisis a little bit, and I don't want to throw darts at anybody in the lending world or anything like that. But I think there is a little bit of a kind of back to normal in some form. Some form. I think people do have a short memory about stuff, but I mean, better than me, Nicole. I mean, there's I think a lot of research out there saying that people want to get back to the office, when they can, and again, my approach is I don't know if our folks anyway really how well do you know what you want until there is the therapeutics and the vaccines, right? Because right now is I don't want to be in the office right now if I gotta get on public transportation and do all these other things that might be have a little bit different risk profile. But there are reasons to be in the office, and I think that's the stuff that some of those fundamentals I think are still there. So what the research is saying, and why it's important to get people together and why it's important to be in the office. But and I think people have a short memory about some of this stuff. So I think combine those two things, and maybe it'll be a blip on the radar, I guess would be my prediction, and not kind of a massive change in how people are using space.
I think it's so interesting because, your goal of like 50% this year, if it's possible, and I think that along with those threshold conversations is so important, because I will say, like, the problem with me, if I go in the office and no one's there, I'm like, well, why did I even go in? Like, I'm going in because I
Yeah.
actually want to see people. I don't want to be within 10 feet of you, but I do want
Yeah.
to see that you're
Right.
there and be able to like have a conversation from a distance.
Right. What are you thinking? What do you picture for the impact of all this and long-term impact?
Yeah, so long term, we're really thinking like, it's still case we've been talking a lot about choice and control, right? Like for years, like that's like the new corner office, right? Is people want choice over where they work and control over how they work. And we just see like the pandemic not creating new trends, but just accelerating the existing ones like that. So for us, we're really looking at offices that like a user could change. So if I want to be within 6 feet of you, I can roll my desk over potentially, right? Or if I want more distance from you, I can move it away. Or maybe I can add some screening around me because I want more privacy. Like more like user flexibility as opposed to just facilities flexibility or the dealer having to change. So.
Yeah. I think the facilities folks are ready to sign up for that.
I'm sure. One last question. I know we're getting close to the end of the time, but you've been involved with CoreNet for over a decade. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And now obviously you're on the executive committee, you're like super involved in the chapter, and we're really pivotal in this whole shift from, all of this in person to virtual, right? Just being part of the executive committee to kind of lead the chapter through that. What makes CoreNet so important to you?
Yeah. hard to believe 10 years. So I mean, there's a couple things for me. The education piece is a big thing. And so it's, all the programming that comes out is really important. And I think it's really great stuff. But I also think that, just by having your finger on the pulse of things, you know, one of the things that I say is I don't always leave an educational program and say, oh, that's exactly what guys got to do tomorrow. But, you kind of see the trends, starting to form and, what other people are thinking about. And maybe even more important for me is, sometimes you hear something and it's nothing new, but it just kind of echoes a sentiment that you've been having or a practice that you've been, doing. It's like, okay, other people are doing this, maybe I'm not crazy, or, this is typical, this is okay. And then, the networking piece, and I probably should have mentioned that when you're, asking about what advice I might have for people getting into corporate real estate. But, the networking piece, it just, just knowing who's out there and knowing who's doing what types of projects. And from my perspective, who's building what, who's working on what, who's designing what. And if you ever have anything similar, you kind of, have, I'll call it a bidders list, but, people in mind for just specific types of projects, because, or hear about what's going on. So I think that networking component's been a big deal for me too. And I mean, honestly, what the chapter's done, this year with everything going on, I think has really been, the awards ceremony last night was, went really, really well. And I think it was a good opportunity to recognize, the performance, and we've got such a talented market here, but, the performance of people that are working, in this area. And just the COVID stuff, just seems like, there's a lot of stuff coming out on that, but it's, nice to have a go-to resource, right? To see what's going on and who's doing what and how different people are handling things. So.
Right. So true. No, it's so true, because this has just been like a plethora of information coming at us, and
Yeah,
CoreNet's done a really great job of really kind of organizing it and making it more concise. So whether you're attending an education event, one of these conversations, or looking online, it's just a nice way to keep all the information together.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Keep you sane.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Jon, thank you so much for joining us today for the CoreNet Cafe.
Yeah,
And
it's my
for
pleasure.
everyone who's been listening, we really appreciate you joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks on the 30th for the next Mid-Atlantic Chapter CoreNet Cafe. Thank you.
Thanks.